And we'll be back in 3, 2, 1. We gone. Welcome back, family, to another episode of the First Sip Podcast. I'm your host, Dekimbe Smith. And this week, I'm back again with the First Sip alumni, my good old friend, Dekimbe. Welcome back.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. I'm happy to be back. Always happy to be on First Sip.
Yep.
You already know.
Now,
man.
I told you, I don't want to cut you too soon, but I told you I had some interesting information I wanted to share right when we started, right? You know, it's been almost a year exactly to the day that we did our last episode.
I have a hard time believing that. That we've already a year.
That's what I'm saying. When I looked, I was doing the sending you the invite yesterday, and I'm looking at the date, March 18th, 2024. And of course, if people are watching this at the time of this recording, March 20th, 2025.
Jeez.
And I'm just like, what? Like, we didn't plan this out. No sort of like, yo, let's make sure we do this, a year later, exactly what it is. It's just, I don't know if it's just like the timing, the energy, whatever it is, but I thought that was such a funny thing to like look at and be like, wow.
That just confirms how fast time is flying. Because I already felt the way about the year, like in general. Now I'm like, wow, that's well. I'm happy to be here, bro. Always happy,
bro. Welcome back.
Thank you for caring enough to allow me to come and be on the platform and talk and chop it up. You already know.
Absolutely, and I guess a part of the reason too is because we usually talk a lot about personal development as well as things that are going on with our business. And I feel like this is something that I usually want to touch on at the beginning, of the year. Definitely make sure that we have our minds right. We're going through January, February now, and things kind of, shaking out. People might start getting back to that comfortable phase where it's like, all right, things may not have started off the way I wanted it to. So let me just kind of, let me just kick back now. And this is a time where there's a lot of things changing over the past year, right? We were hoping the economy was going to get better. We were hoping, our personal expenses were going to go down. Our lives were going to get more affordable. Things would be just easier, right? And if we're being honest, a lot of the struggles that we deal with nowadays, yes, people have their emotional, and personal issues that they deal with, but a lot of us are also dealing with the problem of like, okay, how do we make more money, right? Where do we find places to add an extra coin so we can cut down on these expenses? And we were talking about this last week, and I was like, all right, we got to save this for the episode about this is also a time where we believe that people really should be coming together to collaborate, right? And say, okay, if you got this skill set, you got this skill set, or if you can do this, you can do this. Maybe we can exchange, maybe I can pay you to do that, pay you to do that. And we can really work together to grow something. But you still look around, and it's funny because I talk about this with my parents a lot. There's still a lot of complaining. There's still a lot of, oh, well, we can't do this because of everything that's going on around us. And me personally, I don't know if that's the best answer. So that's the one I wanted to talk about with you and really start off the episode, not take too long to get into it, and just say, what do you think about that right now? Like with the environment that we're in right now, what do you think is some of the, where should we start?
That's a really, really good question. And I think it's a loaded question. And I think it's touchy for some people. I think it can become a very sensitive subject because some people really, really do need the collaboration, in my opinion. And I think the main issue is not that people don't know that they need the collaboration. It's the fact that they don't know how they're going to do it, one, and they don't know what approach to take, one, and they don't know who to trust. And I think it comes into trust and people who care about your vision, finding like-minded people to help work with your vision. Because me personally, for what I do and a lot of the wellness content that I create in a lot of the spaces of photography and creativity and consulting, I want to work with like-minded people when it comes to my vision, because I want people to be just as passionate about what I do as I would be about what they do. You know what I mean? So we could be aligned. I am all for it as far as stance. I think that collaboration is like that superpower. I use that word a lot, but it's that superpower when it comes to this type of work, because as you were saying before, as we talked about when we met at the coffee shop, like it is not meant for us to have all the tools and do all the things on our own. Like it is meant for us to come together and collaborate with the talents that we do have to help lift each other up, because it really is enough room for everybody to eat. And I think a lot of people think that they have to do this like I got it out the mud, I kind of made it by myself. I'm like, no, like that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be about the journey, connecting with people. And then there's a lot of like, people have already tried this. For the people who have already tried this, who may be watching this, I know that there may be frustration. You worked with certain people that may, one, have had you hyped up at the beginning of the process, and then afterward they might have fell off. Like, you know how, and it's not that it's always personal. Some people have personal life. Some people's vision is a little warped. They got too many things going on. Some people still have to work. So like everybody can't devote all the time into being the creative. That's why Everybody has separate roles for a reason. And it's about kind of tapping in with your people and going, what do I bring to the table? What do you bring to the table? And how can we support each other? For instance, I'm a photographer, right? And I'm also like a creative director, a consultant. I can help you with your image and certain things like that, as well as a wellness enthusiast, right? So what I can always do for somebody like you, like we talk about all the time, is like, let's get this portfolio popping. You literally you are on social all the time. You have a brand, you have a platform, you have a podcast. What can I do to help make you more visible? But not only that, also help you feel the most confident while doing it. You know what I mean? That's something that I think is overlooked sometimes. Just like when I talk about you, I one thing I admire about Dekimbe, everybody who's on here, because he doesn't talk about himself a lot. That's why I'm here. Um, he is really, really a genius at strategy. And I think that that's a strength of yours that you don't necessarily lean on when it comes to how you can support other people. You know what I mean? And I think that when we do that, when we sit down with people, when we get to know them, even outside of talking about business, we get to realize what our strengths are. Some of our best friends and people in our lives, literally, we're able to highlight those strengths because we know them on a personal level and on the level of business or their passion and what they operate in. And it's our jobs to bring the best out of each other. So, in short, because I know that was a lot to say, I am all for the collaboration. In the climate of the world that we're in, you are not going to make it by yourself. You just aren't. You're going to get burnt out. You're going to need people to support you, even if you do have the answers as far as your strategy and your own creative. If you start to blow up a little bit more, you start to be more successful, you're going to have less time to do those things. So you need people in your life and in your corner that are going to help keep you lifted up. That's what it is. And that's a word for me as well. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I know that I can often be a hermit. I can fall back into a shell and just try to do things myself because I kind of want to have control of everything and I want to do it a certain way. But there are people that are literally designed to help you.
Yeah, I love that you broke that down. And I appreciate that little that compliment there. That really, I'm gonna take that
Thanks,
to
bro.
heart, and I might send that out to a couple
Yes.
people because no, but seriously, it the first thing that stood out to me when you said that was you have these skills and you may not put it out there as much because you may have run into these walls when you did try,
Yeah.
right? And there's somebody listening right now, like it just hit me and saying, okay, yes, when I was first getting into this, when I was first getting into business, just this whole entrepreneurial mindset, you really do want to step out there and be all for it with your skills. But then
Hmm.
one of the first obstacles and hurdles you're going to run into is the people closest to you, right? The people who you think should support you, the people who you think you should be able to work with, right? Because it's like, hey, I see you. You clearly have you need what I'm providing right now. Why can't we work together?
Yeah.
And that's something for a lot of people who are just getting into, whatever entrepreneurial thing is, whatever creative space they're trying to move into, you're going to have to wrap your mind around that. And that's where, like, obviously people talk about mindset all the time, but it's one thing to talk about it and actually go through it. And I realize now at this point, 3 years into my real estate business, 4 years into doing the podcasting, it is the mindset part of constantly pushing and understanding is like, okay, those no's that you're going to get are just going to push you one step closer to that yes.
Hmm.
But you have to
Yeah.
build up that resilience as somebody who wants to say, okay, I want to do something with the skill. I want to be able to make money from it. I want to be able to help people. You got to keep pushing and you can't give up because you were just talking about it. Like we might get complacent after a certain point and say, okay, well, maybe this isn't for me. It's like, no, that's not it. It's just like you got to realize like a part of it is there's going to be nine no's before you get to that one yes.
Yep.
But it
Yep.
is so hard starting
Yep.
out. And that's so like I wanted to make sure like we go over that and see if there's anything, that you would recommend for people who are just struggling with that resistance to actually step out and say, okay, maybe let me keep pushing, even though my community isn't supporting me.
Hmm. That's good. That's really good, bro. What I would say is generically keep going, of course, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. But like you were just saying, like there is, and I'm learning this because I am not the most patient individual. Like that is one of my. I feel like it is and has been one of my flaws. Like my lack of patience for wanting to be successful, but wanting to see success in a certain way. You get what I'm saying? And it's a lot of us. Like I know what I want. I know what I see for my life, and I know what will happen. It's all about being willing to wait and work for that moment and enjoy the process. Because once you make it there, you're there. You're just maintaining it at that point. You know what I mean? So for me, my thing is let's break things down into realistic steps because a lot of us are looking at what the end goal is when it comes to success and not looking at the small successes that come
Hmm.
within those things. Like for me, the first step toward me being successful is me working on my internal self first, which is why I'm such a nagger about specifically men too, because a lot of women work on this. Men being more intentional about their self care
Hmm.
and understanding your self worth and your awareness, and your space in the world and what you want out of life and speaking up for what you want. Because I feel like if I want to reach a certain level of success that I know is going to be so great and that is going to blow my mind and that one day it will come. I might be 40. We never know. You know what I mean? But I need to be ready to handle that because a lot of us are asking for big successes and we are not in the mental space or the space of responsibility to be able to handle that level of success financially. Like how are you managing your money? How are you investing your money if you have money to invest? What are you doing to save your money? Like, who are you collaborating with? What kind of people are in your life? What kind of people are you um, connecting with? Who are you learning from? Who are you
Yeah.
teaching? You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that the one thing I would say for people who have tried and who are frustrated is it's nothing wrong with going back to the drawing board several times and creating a new play. You get what I'm saying? There is literally
100%.
nothing wrong with that. But I am a person, and I will say this because I don't want to be speaking at people as if I know everything. This is a person who is literally in this space.
Hmm.
I hate capital
Hmm.
HATE. I hate to start over because it makes me feel like I failed. Like you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not necessarily that you failed, is that I feel like that's like literally like God helping you realize, like, okay, I'm going to show you the multiple ways that this can happen so that when you do make it to those successes, you can teach other people
Hmm.
about multiple ways to be successful. You know what I mean?
Well,
And it's not that you failed. This is just not the way for you to, you know what I'm saying? This is not the way that you were supposed to be successful.
hmm.
Maybe you moved a little too fast. Maybe you did business with the wrong person.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Maybe you tried to do it all by yourself.
Honestly,
So,
I feel like I really want to stick on that. I feel like that's part of the reason why people, especially around our age, may not have the confidence to step out because
yeah.
you're talking about the confidence to fail, right? How many people
Mhm.
do we know that are older than us that really failed at multiple things
Yeah.
during our lifetime, right? A lot of our
Mhm.
parents, a lot of our relatives who are older, they may have been within the same job because at that time, this is what was consistent. This is what was able to pay the bills. You were able to buy your
Mhm.
home, and that was the path, right? So the idea of stepping out there and doing something different from what it is you've been doing and saying you
Mhm.
might fail at this a couple times is crazy,
Yeah.
right? I still talk like my mom has she understands the business, but at the same time, she's like, listen, if you can get a nice job at that bank again,
Yeah.
listen,
Yeah.
right? You used to
Yeah.
work at the bank,
Yeah.
you can get some nice, comfortable
Bro.
positions. My mom's like, if
Yes.
you can get that security, that's real nice, right?
Mhm.
But then it's like, mom, the potential on the outside, right? If you're able to do the things that, like you said, the vision that you have, the strategy that you see, you see a path that is 10 times greater than whatever you'll be able to ever achieve in that type of role. And of course, there are
Yes, sir.
people who are able to find jobs that really take care of everything they're looking for. And I think that's the point that everybody's trying to get to. So we're not just saying you got to go out there and start a business or whatever it is. It's like taking your skill and really like leaning into that and saying, okay, if
Yeah.
that wasn't it, then maybe you got to sharpen and refine that skill in another way in another area until you find whatever your thing is. But and I want to go back to the failure thing because I was actually just listening to a sermon last week where the Pastor Tice was talking about the feedback is in the failure, right? And I was like, that
Mhm.
is so like that is such a good way to say it because if
That's
you kind of wrap
good.
your mind around that, right, and say like, yo, you really don't get any feedback or any sort of like criticism. You don't know what to build upon if you don't step forward and fail, right?
Yep.
He's big in the gym.
Yep.
He says like, imagine if you were to go in the gym. You work out all the time, right? We work out, so it's like
Mhm.
imagine you were to go in the gym and never really push yourself to a point of where it's like, okay, let me try a little bit heavier weight and see if I can
Yeah.
lift it.
Yeah.
Your progress
Complacency.
would completely just
Yeah.
flatline, right? And you would never be able to say, okay, you would be real comfortable, you would be
Yep.
really okay. And we see a lot of that around us. But at a certain point, the people who say like, yo, let me add an extra 5 pounds, an extra 10 pounds, It's the same
Mhm.
people like who are at work, right? It's like you see them taking on more responsibility. You were talking about being able to take on the responsibility.
Yeah.
You see how people do it around you, so it's like you take on little by little by little. You don't take the big
Yeah.
leaps, right?
Yeah.
That's where you fail fast. And I'll be the first
Yes.
to say this is a prime example of what happens if you take the big leap too fast, right? And just try to think you can do everything right out the gate.
Yeah.
You will be on a roller coaster. I made an episode about that like last summer about the entrepreneurial roller coaster. It's not fun,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
fail little by little if you can and start picking up that
Mhm.
feedback along the way, and it changes
Yep.
everything. But you still have to have the ability to like want to step out there and do it. And that's
Yes.
something I have to remind myself of every week, bro. Because like when I pick up that phone, when I get new people, new leads coming in, I'm still doubting myself sometimes. I'm like, ah, man, I don't have all the information I need to, be able to like to answer some of their questions. So let me not, do this, or let me not engage in this type of conversation where it's like, you can really figure
Yeah.
this out along the way. You talk to people who have been in this industry for decades, and they still don't know how to answer some of the questions that you ask them. So,
Right.
but they have the ability, they have the mindset of I can figure it out,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. It's so that's such a like once again such a profound thing to me. Just being able to just have that confidence to fail and say, okay, I know I'll figure it out along the way.
Bro, and that's where that so I agree what you spitting right now. You really are
Mhm.
because I think that's why we go back to self-worth and the importance of knowing your worth and your value as a person before your business, before your brand, before anything you do, like knowing who you are. And I think we really, really just don't tap into into that part of us so much because what I'm not in this place anymore, gratefully, but what I used to realize is when I used to fail at things, I would always attach it to myself
Mm,
as if I was a failure. You know what I'm saying?
yep.
And then that allows you stop doing the stuff that you're passionate about because of that. Because you're making these things your identity. And I think that that is the biggest like I don't know what to say. Like the biggest oops you could ever make is attaching the things that are attributes of who you are to yourself. Like I am not my business. You know what I'm saying? A lot of me goes into my business, but I am not that. If the business sunk today, I should still be able to stand tall enough to either start another business, to pivot, to make a smaller step, to do that. So I think that's why a lot of us are afraid of failure because of what it makes us feel about ourselves. And also based on what we see outside. Like we look at people online talking about their successful businesses, hosting these brunches and empowerment brunches and inviting people and giving 2-second advice. And the advice is believe in yourself. You can do this.
Man,
And I paid $85 to $150 to come and support you for you to just tell me you can do this too
just believe in
and take a
yourself.
picture.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, and I'm like, people are looking for more than that. People are looking for your life experience. Talk about your life. Talk about the things you went through. Give people some nuggets of how to start. Like, if you're coming to a successful person's brunch event or something like that, like me and you were talking about you doing the real estate work. Like
Yeah.
when you come and talk to me about something, I want to show you exactly how to start. This is the site you go to. This is what you do. It costs this much to do this. You could also go to this class if you want to do this to start learning how to do it on your own. Here is my contact information if you get lost or get confused,
Mhm.
or my assistant's contact information. Like some people need to be walked through the process and not just told what to do. Um, and I think that that's why some of us feel like we're a failure because one, we don't have enough self worth in ourselves, and two, we haven't had enough people. I don't know why that's doing that. I just went like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that was funny.
Um,
Yeah.
we don't have enough people to empower us in the way that we need, and
Mhm.
that's why we have to rethink where we are and kind of, if that's making sense. Hopefully, I'm not rambling,
Yeah,
but
no, it
like,
definitely is. And I think that's something we talked about this last week about creating more events, creating more spaces where we can keep each other accountable, keep each other moving, right? Share these skills, and help people growing. Because, like you said, there's a lot of groups that we see where people might be paying money to go into some of the spaces and not leave with the information they expected to leave with. I went through a lot
yeah,
of them when I first got into real estate, right? And at a certain point, I was on here telling people, I'm like, I might be done with networking events because every
yeah,
time I go to a networking event, all I'm walking out with is, hey, yeah, I got a podcast. People are like, great, I would love to be on it. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, guys, I'm
yeah,
trying to learn how to sell some houses, trying to learn how to get clients, and all y'all telling me to just
right,
keep shaking hands. I'm just like, okay, I shook everybody's hand here, I'm shaking all these hands, but what's gonna keep it going, right? Like, what systems are you using? Like, what's the tangible stuff that's actually going on behind the scenes? Talk to me about this stuff. And it's
Yeah.
not until I started linking up with people, and really building. People talk about this idea of building your own table, right? I love the idea of building your own round table. I've talked
Hmm.
about it before about like I look at myself as like Nick Fury, and I'm looking for the Avengers, right? So I'm trying to find those superheroes that I can put at the table around me. And it wasn't until I started doing that I realized I'm like, okay, this is how I can really learn. This is how I can really build systems that are
Right.
repeatable because I'm learning bits and pieces. Like we kind of say, it's like, okay, instead of like failing in these different areas, you can also like search for information in different areas and say, okay, well,
Yeah.
how do you do this? You're really good at lead generation. How are you
Yeah.
finding clients? Okay, cool. Hey, you're really good with hospitality and just like your customer service. How do
Yeah.
you treat people so well, right? Like what kind of gifts are you sending people after you finish working with them? All these different,
Hmm.
right? Like, hey, you're really good with social media marketing. What are those things that you do? Or like, what does your system look like? How many times a week are you posting to be able to get people? Like, what does that look like, right? Being able to like sit around and find like those different people will accelerate your growth so much faster and save you a lot of money too. Because like you said, sometimes you'll pay hundreds, thousands of dollars for a program, but it may not be the direction that you actually need. So you got to understand yourself as well too. I guess as I'm saying this,
Yeah.
because I
Hmm.
went through both sides, right? I went through the I'm going to pay for courses and programs, see how these work out for me, but then it gets to the point where I realize I'm like, you know what? The programs might be good at a certain point, but I also do need people like that I can actually sit in front of, sit down with
Right.
and be like, yo, let's brainstorm, let's strategize, let's come up with some stuff that we can do. Just like how we were doing last week, right? We sat down for like 2 hours and came up
Yeah.
with a whole list of ideas that we can run through, for the next year, the next 2 years. And I'm like, this is the stuff that I think if more people did on a regular basis, it would help them so much more because you see people at the top level, right? When you get into these industries and these businesses, that's what we're really saying. Like at these networking events, when you pay to get into the higher levels, the higher circles, that's what they're actually doing, right? That's where they're sharing the real information and stuff. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we're where we're at now, we don't see it as valuable and being able to say like, yo, like you said last week, hey, why don't we link back up, start doing some more
Yeah.
shoots, right? Start doing some stuff. Hey, let's start doing some home tours, right? We start
Yeah.
helping each other out.
Yeah.
It'll help you get some visibility. It'll help me get visibility. Anybody now who needs that home tour, they know you can do this type of service. Anybody who needs to sell a home know that I can get it this level of marketing. It's a win-win, but people got to be able to. But also, me 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been thinking like that, right? So you got to also be willing to go through the journey, just like how we talk about the gym. You're not going to be able to bench 225 your first day in there, right? You're not going to be
Right.
able to bench 315, squat 315, whatever it is goals you're trying to set. You got to
Mhm.
start probably with maybe just the bar. You got to get your form together, right? You got to know how to
Yeah.
go up and down, right? Just
Right.
like if you're trying to do this stuff, like it's a lot to learn. And if we don't like take the time and like be willing to do it and just like also understand where to find these people out and be willing to invest in ourselves in different areas, I think it's just going to be it's going to be a lot of headache and a lot of sadness because
Yeah.
it does take a serious investment in yourself as well when you take this leap. And I think that's the part that people have to, I guess, just like learn on their own, right? It's just like, okay, like
Yeah.
what level of investment am I willing to put into this? Like, what cost am I willing to
Mhm.
pay to get what I'm looking for?
I have a question for you
Hmm.
because I feel that what you're saying. What do you think? And if you can't recall, that's fine. But when you were starting out in real estate, like leaving banking and like the comfortability or stability that our parents say
Yeah.
that what was the most valuable advice you received while starting out in a new field of work?
Hmm. Most valuable piece
It's
of
a
advice.
it's a loaded question, but it could have been anything. Like, even if you don't know it word for word, like
Hmm.
what? Because that's taking a leap. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, for people like entrepreneurs who take a leap from leaving a job,
Hmm.
or they leave a job because it just wasn't for them and it was affecting their mental health or whatever the thing was, they decide to pursue their passions
Hmm.
in any way, shape, or form. Like a lot of people, I feel like have a moment where you like slightly regret leaving because
Yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah.
stability.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then
I don't know if I've talked
you
about this
need,
before on the podcast, but like I remember the day when I quit my job. When I
yeah,
was right before I quit, I went outside. I well, let me go back. So I was in a meeting right with my regional manager at the time and the branch manager, And we were going over the fact that I had just got my real estate license, because for the past couple of months there, I had already been licensed to do lending at the bank, and I was also a relationship manager, so a banker, right? So I was in a hybrid role, and I'm sitting there, realizing I'm like, okay, this is pretty much real estate work, so I can step out and really, in my mind, I could build a business around what I'm doing here, right? Kind of like a hybrid, that real estate agent that has the financial knowledge and also has the real estate knowledge to become like the perfect person, right? So it gets to a point where I get licensed, and now I'm in this meeting with my regional manager and my branch manager, and the regional is talking to me about how she feels as though my attention has left the bank. She doesn't feel like it's like I'm focused on what the goal is here
Yeah.
anymore. And she felt as though this was a good reason to now have a conversation with HR about my future here. Realistically, what was happening was that I didn't want to stay on the path that she had for planned for me anymore. And I told her, I was
Okay.
like, I want to either get in more into real estate or I want to get into the investment side of banking. And getting to the point where you said, this is where I stepped outside now. And I was like, all right, I got to call my parents. Right. I talk to my parents all the time. So first person I call is my
Mhm.
dad. And
Mhm.
my dad is down in South America at this time. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, Dad, this is what's going on. This is crazy. Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm just sitting here trying to make a better life for myself. I'm trying to do this, entrepreneurial thing, but I also would like this job here. What do you think I should do? And I don't remember word for word what he said, but the thing I remember from both of them was that they basically said, you know what, I trust you and I trust that you'll figure it out, with the vision that you have. Like you said, I guess they see that like I've always had this ability to like just strategize or just come up with ideas, right? And just going all in on it and just not kind of throwing things to one, right? I try to make smart moves before I just take that leap. So like I said, I knew about real estate. I understood how to get clients, how to do these things, what I would need to do, and just hearing that advice from them was just like, we trust you, so just trust yourself and just
Mhm.
go all in on it, right? Because my father also, when he lost his job working for Citibank back in the last recession back in 2009, and at that time he left and started a chicken farm, right? And a farm that's still running and over in Ghana. And so I guess coming from him, he saw it. He was like, you know what? This is it's gonna be rough, right? Because he definitely said that he was like, it's not gonna be easy if you want to go ahead and step out of this position, but you have to trust yourself and you have to be willing to work at it every single day to get what it is you want, because nobody else is making this decision but you. And I think that piece of advice gave me the freedom. It gave me the, I guess if you want to call it like the autonomy, the agency to then go out there and step in and be like, yo, I could really just I could figure this out. Right. Like, and if I don't figure out, who else do I have to worry about? Because I
Mhm.
think that was a big part of it too. You talk about identity and just having like some of these things wrapped up into like who we are. Bro, at that
Mhm.
time, being a banker was me, right? I loved when I would like be able to go to like family events or like fun with, and people were like, "Oh yeah, how's your job at such and such bank?"
Yeah.
Because it just feels good because people they look at you differently as opposed to like, "Hey man, how's business going? Are you able to finally like are things good? You able to make sales? Like are you
Yeah.
able to eat?"
I know what that feels like.
It,
I remember. Yeah. I remember.
bro,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm
I remember.
saying. Like hearing from my parents, so it's like I don't know if I would consider it like advice or just like that reassurance where that was the thing that gave me the ability to just like, yo, at the end of the day, like I have nobody to impress. And the people who I'm trying to sit here and like really help at the end of the day, my family, my community, those are the only people who I'm really trying to get to. And if where
Mhm.
I'm at right now isn't allowing me to do that, what else do I need to hear? Right? What else do I need to hear at this point? What else do I need to see to realize like, yo, you have to either step out and do this, or you have to sit here 10 years later and realize like, yo, you had a chance.
Yeah.
You had a chance when you were 28 to really go and do that. You remember your
Yeah.
dad said, hey, go ahead. Your mom said, hey, go ahead. Right? Like, if you need to come home and sleep on the couch, by all means, you can do real estate from here. So then what would be stopping me? Right. And I think sometimes people get that piece of advice. They hear that stuff over and over and over from people around them, like, yo, you should try that. You're really talented at this thing. Why haven't you tried building this thing?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because they see an overwhelm of responsibility. They don't know if they're capable, right? We talked about this last week. We're two people where we hear new ideas and our mind goes from, oh no, I can't possibly take this on to how can I get it done?
Yeah.
And that has
Yeah.
always been my way of thinking. So when I stepped out of it, it was just like, all right, now how do we get this done? And then, of course, along the way, right, you start picking up different pieces of advice here and there. But that was the one for me, like just from a confidence and mindset side, because it flipped the switch where I was like, yo, I'm going all in for the next five
Yeah.
years. I'm going all in. There's nothing that can hold me back. There's nothing that stops me. I have the
Yeah.
skills that I think are necessary to begin what I want to do with this business. And then I know how to communicate. I know how to network with people. I know how to get in rooms. So I'm going to shake and
Mhm.
bake in that area over the next 5 years and figure out how to become successful at this. And then, like I said, that's where the rest of the advice goes. But it really started with that one conversation when I walked out and talked with them. It was just like, all right, this is what it's going to be. So,
I like that.
yeah.
But that's advice right there. That's good advice. It's that mentality sometimes where you just need a validation or more so reinforcement from people that know you best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that just one, the relationship you have with your parents, I love that you talk to them and like you can call them about your
Mm-hmm.
decisions and they can like, help try to guide you the best way they can. But to know that you're calling on somebody to give you advice, and the advice is to trust yourself because you are capable of making decisions because of the type of person that they know you are. That's empowerment in itself. Like, you know what I mean? And I think that we underestimate those moments. You know what I mean? We underestimate the moments when the people that are closest to us are reinforcing us that we can do it. Sometimes we're looking for validation from people on the outside of those people because it just you want to reach new heights. And sometimes the way we look at new heights is we look at it through people who have larger platforms, people who don't know you because you think that people who know you are telling you the things that you just
Mm-hmm.
want to hear. But I think that that's false. I think that that right there is just a big
Mm-hmm.
deal because I'm sure that helps you go, wow, like
Yeah.
I can do this. I don't have to stay here and be stuck here and deal with an ultimatum from somebody else that I
Mm-hmm.
don't really like. So like, yeah, I think that's dope, bro. And
Yeah.
I think we just need to hone more into our home team.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have one, we need to start developing one. And that means going outside and meeting people.
Bro, that's it. That's it. And I was we left our last meeting and we were talking about this idea of doing something from a social media kind of like marketing management side because we see businesses or just creative entrepreneurs, people around us who really do need that help of just managing their week to week operations, right? Who don't really have an idea of like, okay, what should I be doing? What's the strategy look like? What are the resources around me that are affordable or that I can scale with, right? The people who I can grow with to get my business to the point I want to get it to. And one of the ideas I wrote down last week was starting like an accelerator group, some sort of, weekly group where we get together or bi-weekly where people can come and say, okay, this is, where can we get some advice? Where can we get some tips, some strategy and connect with people like yourself, right? Hey, I need to get new headshots. I need to get new marketing material for my business. So I kind of wanted to touch on that next. If is there other things that you're working on within the next couple of months? Because I want this to be a tangible episode too, right? Like, what are some things that people can say, like, all right, they got this going on. I'm gonna definitely send out the invite for people if they want to join that social media accelerator, because it is
Wow.
something that we I think we're both very passionate on with the social media world marketing, and I think between yourself, myself, my brother, we bring a combination, right, of different perspectives from different areas. If people don't know, my brother does a lot of video editing, especially for a lot of successful entrepreneurs. And
He's great.
yeah, if check out his work, I'll tag his stuff below. But being able to like collaborate and bring people around in a room, right? Like imagine if we get 10 people in a room each week, every other week, and just really help each other grow. What does that look like over a year in the next 2 years? Because I mean, I know what it's done for me over the last 3 years. I've seen what it's done for you, right? Shout out to Izzy. He's not going to say it, but my guy just got a Dove partnership that he just went ahead and dropped on us last week. Go ahead and make sure you check out that video. But
I appreciate
these are the things, right? Being able to show people how to land collaborations, right? How to do different partnerships, how to get your business up to a point where you can even start even having entertaining these conversations. People aren't readily giving this stuff out, and it's hard to find this information unless you're a part of a group. And I think rightfully so,
Yeah.
right? Because you got to be able to seek this information. Nobody's going to come out of their own day to day and be like, "Oh, come on with me, let's go do that stuff." Unless you're like
Yeah.
me, and you're like one of my friends in a group chat, or like you're my family in WhatsApp, and I'm like, "Hey, we gotta get on that, right?" Because that's
Yeah.
just the energy I'm always on. And
Yeah.
so, like what anything like that you got planned or want to think about that we can like brainstorm on now?
Um, I think that I'm in this weird position now where I am like like I told you before when we met, in full transparency, like I hadn't been promoting the photography side of what
Hmm.
I do in a very long time. I think I got caught up in like so many other things. I do the work that I do for my full time and personal now, which I'm grateful for because I always wanted a 9 to 5. If I was going to work a 9 to 5, I wanted the 9 to 5 to still fulfill what I'm passionate about, and that took a very long time to do because I worked in communications a lot, more on like more of the admin side of it, a little more, and I wasn't really passionate about it. But now I work for the Department of Public Health. I am a visual content coordinator, so I do everything from some graphic design skill to social media videos and like short form, long form content. I operate the YouTube channel, like, like highly involved with several departments. And that has shown me that I have a strong skill set in like consulting and
Hmm.
just giving advice to people and helping people make the right decisions for their brands. Like hearing people's vision. Like my brand is called Visual Media, VIZZUAL. And what I do for that brand is I basically make the visions come to life. So when people contact me and say, "Hey, I want to do this photo shoot. I want it to be this, this, and that. I don't know exactly how I want to go about it, but this is what I wanted to fulfill. Here's the inspo." Like, you know what I mean? They send it to you. I am really, really good at bringing those visions to life, but also adding the personal touch to them. Because some people just want to replicate things, and I'm like, while you want to replicate something, you want to make sure there's nothing wrong with, you know, imitating, and there's nothing wrong with like getting inspired from other people, but what you want to do is always make sure that you add a little bit of you into it. Um, so in the next few months, one of the things I'm doing is I'm promoting and stepping out on faith and promoting more of my skill set of like being more of a like image consultant for people, for their content, for what they do personally, headshots, inspiring people to upgrade their whole personal portfolios. Because a lot of times we get two headshots taken and we're using those same headshots for every appearance that we're on. Like I was doing that when I started making more podcast appearances. I was like, yo, they like, can I have a headshot? I'm like, you got these same two headshots. Like, let's change it up.
Yeah.
Let's diversify the portfolio. So now I told Dekimbe I try to keep a running current 6 to 8 headshots because you also change as you lose weight, as you work out, as you work on your wellness, as your skin clears up, as whatever happens. Like you want people to see the best you. So what I'm doing is I'm doing it through my platform first, is just making sure that I'm representing myself and telling people like you can do this work too. Like it's okay for you to work on yourself. It's okay for you to care about your image, especially the people that are forward facing, like outward facing. Like if you do real estate, you want to do more than just post pictures of house of listings. I'm telling you now. Like what's going to set you apart is your personality. Is you walking through those houses. You at the beginning talking about this house, this property is that, I'm this person, and giving them a little bit of your personal life as well so that they see the human side of you. We literally dealt with a pandemic. You get what I'm saying? So we all came into a space where we kind of were stuck on, it became a place where we developed the idea of, how am I explaining this? I have to worry about me and mine. You know what I'm saying? And we really, really didn't take the time to realize that the community really is what we need. So it's hard for us sometimes to realize, like, I need to show myself to people. I don't have to tell all of my business. I don't have to, it doesn't have to be reality television. It really, really doesn't. But it's important for us to showcase the qualities of who we are to people because that's what draws people near. People are looking, I feel like, beyond the brand now.
Yeah.
Like this is the brand, but who is the person behind the brand and what can they offer to me? You know what I mean? And what can they do for me on a social aspect to make me feel confident enough to be able to do the same type of work or do whatever I'm passionate about. So in short, I am really, really pushing to inspire people more on a larger scale than just taking photos for people. I'm always going to do that. That's my passion. I love it. I love to be creative, but I want to empower people to do the same thing that I had to empower myself to do. So there's no specific projects right now. Like I do like the mail spaces and the safe spaces and things like
Hmm.
that that'll keep in the city that will keep happening, which I do talk about this kind of stuff in those spaces. But ultimately I want to brainstorm a little more and get ideas, even me and you talked about it, about how I can do that more for people. And get myself out there a little bit more too. So it's inspiring for me because I get the most joy from watching other people be successful, especially people who look at me and they always say, I used to take it as a personal challenge when they used to go, I'm not really a picture person like that, but I need these photos. And
Yeah.
then they leave smiling and happy and
Yeah.
trying to book another. So I'm like, that's what you want. You want people to look beyond themselves and be like, you think you're not a picture person. No, let's change that up. And then you show them the pictures and they're happy and they're smiling and they go out into the world a more confident person and a happier person because and it's really just them tapping into their own potential of
Yeah.
themselves. Like, you know what I mean? You need somebody to bring it out of you. Everybody's not born a person to jump out into the world and be like, here I am.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
This, and I say a lot in the episodes, you got to be willing to take that first sip, right? You gotta say, okay, you know what? I don't know how this is going to be, but let me try it out. Oh,
Yeah.
I kind of like this. Right? It's
Yeah.
not that bad. And
Right.
then you go,
It's never as bad as you think it
then you go
is.
back for more, and then you do it halfway through it, and it's like, wow, I need another one tomorrow,
and now
every day.
and now you're doing things that you
Mm-hmm.
never thought that you would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told my wife, I was like, I never thought I'd be speaking to groups of men
Mm-hmm.
about self-confidence and awareness and like family and love and like what masculinity really is. Like I never thought that I would be in those spaces and being the person leading the conversation. You know what I mean? There were so many times when I didn't really know who I was in general from different circumstances, but like look what self-development can do for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like give you the courage and the confidence to do. And that's for all of us in every aspect of life. We're not even just talking about people who have businesses. Like, I mean, we're not talking about people who have businesses that are just forward facing. And your performance in general, you want to be the most confident in what you do because people see that in your work.
Mm-hmm.
However you produce work, whatever you do, you could work in admin, like you know what I mean, any of that. But
Yeah.
you have to come your best self and be the
Mm-hmm.
most confident so that you can produce the work that you need to work. We
Yep.
need to be more of producers and less
Mm-hmm.
consumers.
And like you're saying, you can do that in the job you're at. Like I remember being back at the
Yeah.
bank, and there were the service managers who were leaps and bounds beyond the other service managers, right? Just like you said about the way they performed, the way they addressed certain things, the way they showed up to work. It was crazy to see the divide, and that's something that I'm always interested in too. Is how do people kind of keep themselves on the okay, like, and I'm very like just like forward with a lot of things, right? So like I tell people like I think there's a point where you're like you really are just leading a life of like mediocrity, where you're kind of just like going
Mhm.
through the motions. It's like, all right, I'm going to take whatever kind of comes at me. I don't care. I'm not going to try to seek out anything, no new information, no new resources, and everything is just like the world's just against me, right? Then there's the people
Yeah.
who are like, you know what? I got some energy. I woke up today. I'm going to go out there and try to make something out of this. And the whole mentality
Mhm.
is just different, right? So like you're saying, like that performance and the way you show up, the way you're developing yourself, taking care of yourself, you're either taking care of yourself or you're not. Like you
Yeah.
take from somebody who started off and went through their 20s with a big bodybuilding arc, right? Like I was really into it. And then I fell off. Like you talk
Well,
about having like your trait wrapped, like your whole identity wrapped into it. I was a bodybuilder
yeah.
through and through, people. Right. I
Yeah.
was a dude in the gym wearing the string tank was like, bro, put on a shirt. That was
Bro,
my
he
identity
was.
through and through. Right. And
For those who don't know him before that, he really, really was that person.
bro, and then just like fall off. And then it's just like, all right, how do we get back? Like it's not just maintaining, right? Like you have to keep putting in some sort of work to stay above that line. And if not, you're going to be going below that line. Nobody is
Yeah.
sitting there doing it for you. Right. So it's either going to be finding the people, like how we're doing here, strategizing, saying, or keeping each other accountable. Hey, I know we talked about this. What's the next step? Right. I know you said you have
Yep.
this goal. What's the next thing you got to do? Right. Even if you don't have you don't have to have ideas for people. Just literally be present enough to ask them and just be interested enough. That I think is such
Yep.
a pivotal thing. When you can find somebody who's interested in what you're doing and just asking questions, it almost makes you realize like, yo, I may not realize 100% why I'm doing this, but there's people paying attention to. So let me not let them down, right? If that's the thing that you got to tap into, don't let them down. Just the same way, like how you have kids, Izzy, and I hear this a lot from my friends who have kids. Like, you can't just sit there and just not get up and do work. What you gonna do? Let your kids down?
Right. And they're going to hold you accountable if nobody else is. They're going to be like, you said we
Exactly.
were going to the playground at 4:00. It is 4:30. Why are we not
And
at
bro,
the playground?
me as a single person without kids, I realize I'm like, that's such a superpower. Like, I don't even know if like you guys tap into that as much as like I see it because I'm like looking at it, I'm like, yo, that's accountability on a different level. I always used to ask
Mhm.
myself, what made my dad get up and start running on the treadmill at 4 a.m. before he had to drive to Manhattan from the Poconos for work?
Yeah,
Yo, we
yeah,
had to eat. We had to eat. He had bills. We had bills to pay. He had to send us to school. It
yep,
it is a different level of accountability. So I'm like, now imagine if you can find that with people who are also trying to do the next thing that you're trying to do, whether that
yeah,
be investing, whether that be, oh, y'all trying to buy a home. So maybe and four of your friends get together and it's like, yo, we're going to hold each other accountable from a savings goal standpoint,
yeah,
right? Entrepreneurial stuff, like we're saying, oh, let's start throwing events, right? One thing we talked about, and I'm still working out the details on this, is, let's do like a network, like not like a networking event, but an event where we can get our headshots updated, right? And people can get in
yeah,
a room and we can start talking about the social media, start talking about the marketing, exchanging stuff that's actually like really working for one another and just really helping each other grow throughout the year, because it's a cost effective way to stay close with people and to start building with people. And I
yeah,
think I know for me personally, when I started looking at some of these ways, like, okay, how can we collaborate? How can we stay together?
yeah,
My first thought is always, and my first fear is, damn, this is going to be expensive. you
yeah.
know, it's like, where do you find the money to do those things? And
I'm so glad you
yeah,
said
yeah,
that.
mm-hmm,
Pulled so many people back.
yep,
We talked about this up at the coffee shop. Like people, money, because when you talk to people, a lot of times people don't have the money conversation right away.
mm-hmm,
Like if you meet with me, right, and you come to me and you tell me like, is I have this great idea, I've been wanting to do this, or I want to do more photos, and I want to like step back into the modeling world. That's for
I don't
him.
know who you're talking to.
That's if you tell somebody that you link up with them, then the next question they're waiting for is like, I wonder how much he's going to charge me
Mm-hmm,
to do it. And I don't really have it like that. Like, you know what I mean? But like, if we just had more forward conversations or ways to support each other, like, I feel like I'm not always a money based individual, especially with the
mm-hmm.
people in my close circle. Like, you want what? All right, let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's make it happen. Like, we can talk about it later. Or some people come to you and they say, listen, I'm not financially in a place to do this, but I know I need a couple of headshots so I can reach a higher level. I do this for you, like in place of this, or get like if they have a service and I have a service, we'll just barter the services. Like, you know what I mean? Like that is what the collaboration really is about. Because I feel this way: you're either going to be a producer or you're going to watch other people produce and you just consume. We're on social media platforms. We do all of this stuff, and a lot of the platforms are free. Use and leverage those platforms and start somewhere. It's better than you doing nothing because we are literally in a world where we consume everything.
mm-hmm.
Like we watch TV shows and we get them ratings. We don't get any money from paying a subscription. And we lose money actually. We pay a Netflix subscription
Right.
and we watch somebody else be successful on television, and our streams are literally putting more money in their pocket. I love it. I'm all good for supporting. But my thing is, when are you going to do something for yourself that's going to garner the same advice? Like I could be a consumer, but allow me to be a producer as well. Because those should be going hand in hand. I should be consuming things from people and supporting them, but also producing so that I could be supported as
Mm-hmm.
well. Otherwise than that, you're just living in the world. You're just going by the trend.
Bro,
You're just going
I feel like there needs to
water.
be a campaign for people to understand more like how close a lot of us are on that other side of just having such less financial stress on a monthly
Yeah.
basis. Because I
Yes.
remember reading a stat the other day, and I don't remember it exactly line for line for people, but it was basically saying that if people could make an extra $500 a month, they would be out of that financial stress that a lot of us go through. It's an
Mm-hmm.
extra
Mm-hmm.
$500 a month,
Yep.
right? Like we're not talking about a lot of money. It's an extra 125 a week, right? And when we're saying that's like, okay, what can we do on a weekly basis to make an extra 125?
Yep.
And that's where I started scratching my head. I'm like, okay, where do these ideas come from? Like, how can people start tapping into this stuff? And that's how I realized, like I said, it's only going to come from people putting that skill set out there, just trying something and saying, like, okay, now let me ask for the sale, right? I see
Yeah.
people are liking it. And social
Yeah.
media is such an easy way to kind of do whether you want to call it like A/B testing or just test the market,
Mhm.
see whether people really like your stuff, right?
Yeah.
And because and that's what I mean, because like you were bringing up, like just being able to like leverage this technology, but also saying, okay, well, where do I start? What do I do? Yo, just start with something. Can you make an extra 125 a week? Can you make five
Yep.
sales of $25? Right? What,
And you know what a lot of people are doing? Ebooks.
and that's what I'm saying, right? Because people want the information, or can you create a product or whatever it is? Can you create a service? Like there there has to be some sort of ideation that goes behind it and some sort of like testing. And I think that's, like I said, about being able to come together and think these things through with people, because the strategizing is, like I said, what I love. That's like my bread and butter, right? Being able to break things down to the simple, reverse engineering things. Ever since I heard the term reverse engineer like 10 to 12 years ago, I have just loved it, because I'm like, yo, this really is it. Like, you just got to see how they finish and then just bring it all the way back and then just follow the plan until you get to that point. And that's what I realized a lot of this goes into. It's like, okay, well, like, how much do you need to make up an extra a monthly basis? We're not talking about, yo, let's make an extra 6 figures a year or whatever it is, right? It's like, what can we do to make an extra 10 grand a year? So I can take a couple more trips, so I can pay off, my car without any stress. So I can get a better car, so I can get a better
Yep.
apartment. If we can just start there, and then, like you said, because once you're making an extra 10,000 a year, and I've seen this with my own business, right? So it's not like I'm just pulling this out of nowhere. If you
Yeah.
can start off and say, okay, now I've learned how to make 10, 15,000, I literally just have to just increase the lead flow
Mm-hmm.
into that system, into that pipeline that
Mm-hmm.
I have, and just take it up a little bit more in year 2. And then in year 3, and oh my gosh, what was I saying to you right before I got on here, bro? I'm like, people are finally reaching out and saying, hey, I saw your video on Instagram, on TikTok.
Bro,
And I'm just like, bro, my videos are still
bro.
getting, like, I'm thinking 200, 300 views is a bad thing. And then I always
Yeah.
have to check myself, Dekimbe. And like, as you were saying, people are going on social media. Check yourself when you see 50 views and ask yourself what you
Yes.
would do if you were in a room talking to 50 people.
Yes.
You would not be sitting
That's a
there.
big
You would not be sitting there saying, oh, only 50 people watching my video. Bro, you would be shaking if you had to talk in front of 50 people right now.
especially if it's like we talked about before, a consistent group of people
Mm-hmm.
that like your content.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you have an audience, and that is the people that you should be making sure that you're catering to when it comes to your work and the things that you're putting out. Like, those are the people that truly support you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Those people that you see in your likes every time you post a like or
Mm-hmm.
you post something are the people who care. A lot of them care about what you are
Yeah.
doing. And those are the people that you should be talking to, because then it'll double just based off by you. If we stop switching the strategy because we want to go viral,
Cool. Mm-hmm.
you get what I'm
That was
saying?
me. Mm-hmm.
If we stop switching, I still do it sometimes, and I haven't done it as much now because I think I'm like, it doesn't work. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make sense. It's that if we stop worried about what the majority likes and worry about the group of people that are our niche audience that care about us and continue to produce content, you will double with those type of people. And those people will also continue to support you onward. You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of people want to go viral, but are you ready to go viral?
Bro, I answered
Can
that
you
question.
produce,
Nope.
can you produce on a viral level? And that is why God is not allowing you to be viral right now, because there's some things you have to learn about your business. If you go viral and you make $60,000 in 2 months, can you manage that 60K, or are you going to blow through that 60K?
Mm-hmm.
You're wondering where it went. Like, you know what I mean? That's why in the meantime, while we have smaller audience, I'm a micro influencer. I only have about like 4,300 followers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I still get invited to events. And I used to always I was actually at an event recently for Governor Shapiro's
Yeah.
digital team.
Mm-hmm.
They invited out micro influencers, and we actually had this conversation. Part of the conversation was how some of us are intimidated walking into spaces as entering the influencer lifestyle and being of us having a smaller following. Because sometimes you get invited to these spaces based off your platform, which is the biggest compliment like ever.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not get that wrong. But some of these people have 15,000
Yeah.
followers. Some of these people have 285,000 followers, and you have 4,500. And when you look at that number, you might get intimidated because you think you're not as impactful. And that is the lie that is being told. Sometimes you just are not getting the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to move up on your strategy. Sometimes you need to invest in your content. Sometimes you need to boost your content. Sometimes you need to go out and network with different people. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of time before you reach those audiences. But if while you're a micro influencer, you're just as effective
Mm-hmm.
to your audience, and you mean just as much to your audience. It's just up to you to continue to produce the work that you've been producing. Be your authentic self. Don't keep changing the strategy because, oh, I didn't go viral doing this one time. Let
Yeah.
me do this again. Do what feels good to you and natural to you, and the following will come. Like, you know what I mean? And That's one of the hardest things to learn as an influencer. But like you said, speaking of like partnerships, when I opened up my email and it was Dove Men, I was like, hold
It's
on.
like, what's going on here?
Who are you? I'm a Dove user. Like
Mhm.
I like Dove. So
Yeah,
I'm also like I have
same.
Dove Men products
Great,
already.
great.
So
Me and my brother, we always
same
get the big bottle. We always get the big bottle.
thing.
Come here, man. Yep.
I hear you. But like that was a big compliment that the platform is doing what
Hmm.
it was supposed to do. It wasn't a person I knew that worked for Doveman that reached out to me because they know me and said I would be good for it. Still good. But this is a person who doesn't know me at
Yeah.
all who reaches out and say, hey, I saw your platform online and I really, really think you would be amazing
Hmm.
for this campaign. And I'm like, wow, me and my 4,300 followers,
Yeah.
cool. But like,
But bro,
that means
yeah,
that you're
I think it goes to what you're saying.
doing,
Like you have a unique voice in social media, right? And I think
yeah,
you definitely tap into that and lean into that more than a lot of other people do. And it's so true to you. And it's
yeah,
something that it's like I had to like program my brain leaving the corporate world, leaving the banking world, because everything has to be so professional, right? So buttoned up,
mhm,
so so just blah 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 blah. And for me, like coming out of that, being able to just even communicate on social, right? Like being able to type out captions, typing out posts on
yeah,
Facebook. I'm just like, yo, this is not how you talk, right?
yeah,
But at the same point, it's like you do want to keep some level of professionalism because you don't want to just act, completely crazy. But I'm just like,
yeah,
how do I find my voice? And that's when I love the idea of video, right? I love when video took over social media because I'm like, thank God I don't got to be on Twitter all day and regretting what I tweeted, 2 months ago, like I did back when I was, 16 and 17 years old. It's like, cool, I can make a video, I can talk, as things go through my head. I think this is a good medium for people to actually understand who I am, right? How I go about things.
yeah,
So that's the thing that I want to touch on as well. Like you got to find what works for you, right?
yeah,
If you check out Izzy's content, you'll see what works for him. You check out my stuff, you'll see what works for me. And I'm just like, yo, we gotta really lean into this stuff and just continue to double down on it because, like you're saying, that's when you start to find the system that works. Not when you're jumping around saying, oh well, let me try this trend and let me try this trend and doing that. And not saying that riding a trend here and there doesn't help out,
yeah.
especially if you want to get more exposure, reach more people. But
Mhm.
that's a point where I think where you have the basics figured out is when you should start tapping into things like that, right? But in the
Yeah,
beginning, figure out a system that works for you. What can I stick to every single week? Whether that be something like
yep,
this, right? Putting out a video on YouTube. Okay, I'm going to do this each week. Okay, or maybe I'm going to put out a video on social 3 times a week. Maybe I don't know how to do that, so maybe I have to talk to somebody. I had a friend reach out to me 2 years ago who was just getting into the social media space, and he was like, "Hey, I see what you're doing. Let's work together, right? Can you help basically like coach me up on how to start putting out my stuff?" And we went through the whole
mhm,
stuff, right? I showed him how to record the videos. I was helping him edit the
yep,
videos, like going through the whole thing. And now I see the stuff that he's doing. And I'm just like, yo, it's incredible to see the progress that can be made over 2 years. And it's not hard, right? He's not doing any crazy big production stuff. It's like just sit here, talking head kind of video. Hey, this is what's going on in the day. But people are seeing him on a consistent basis so much more than the next person in his industry. And that's the next thing that I always kind of like go to when people tell me like, oh, well, I don't need to use social media or marketing. I'm like, okay, well, let's say the person who's starting off at the same point as you, right, at the same level of business that you're at, or whether it is in your job, wherever it is, you're trying to separate. There's a person out there who's marketing themselves more, putting themselves out there, going in more rooms, networking, whatever it is, right, to be more visible. And they're climbing, and you're trying to get more exposure. So who do you think is gaining more exposure? The person who's showing up in multiple places, or you who's just saying, the people will find me?
yeah,
And that's the thing where I'm just like, there's no way, like anybody who's trying to put their head on, in the sand and say like, okay, well, I'm going to avoid social media. I'm going to avoid, oh, don't even get me started with leveraging AI and social media. That has taken me so far over the
uh,
last 3 to 6 months now. I could talk,
I need to
I could talk
tap
about
in
chat
more.
GPT for the next 2 hours.
I need to tap in more.
Bro,
I
anything,
do.
any questions you have, let me know. I got all the prompts. I got
Bring
everything.
it.
I
Yes, I
got it
need all that.
because that's what I'm saying. Like that's the next phase that we're getting into, right? And bro, like I said, I want to be able to sit down with entrepreneurs who are starting out, people in their jobs who are saying like, yo, how can I get to the next level? That's what my friend, shout out to Ryan, he's doing a lot of that right now, right? It's like he's working with employees, people who are trying to get that next promotion, trying to increase their salary, and saying, okay, this is how you can start developing your skills. This is how you can expose yourself more in this area. So being able to leverage all these skills, these different tools, and being able, because at the end of the day, like we started off with, we're all trying to make more money here, people, so we can live better
Yeah,
lifestyles and take care of
for
ourselves
sure.
better, secure our
Yes.
village, right? Secure our community. Me, I got a plan where I need to be out back down in Guyana in about 15 years on a 5 acre
Yeah.
compound. So I got to make some money, right? So it's just like we have, yeah, right. Like we have stuff that we got to be doing. And that's why we got to learn how to leverage these things and we got to come together and collaborate because I feel like that's the greatest accelerator. Being able for me to
Yeah.
sit there and like, yo, Izzy, what have you been tapping into the last 6 weeks, the last
Yeah.
6 months, right? What are you seeing that I haven't been seeing?
But do you see that? Do you understand that the special part about you as a creative is that you said it like 3 times since you had that blurb about the part you were just talking about. You showed people how to do things, and you watched them be successful after you showed them, without wanting anything out of it, without like expecting too much back, but more so like you're a person I care about. I love that you're interested. Let's sit down for a few minutes and let me show you how to
Mm-hmm.
do this so that you can do what you're passionate about. There are not enough people that are willing to stop everything they're doing if they have the time and go, bro, let me sit down and show you this. Like me as a photographer, I try to find it time to when I hear somebody say they're interested in photography, especially when they're in college, it hits a soft spot in my heart because I remember being interested in taking a photography course in class and starting a business once I
Mm-hmm.
graduated. Like, so I go, okay, do you have a camera? If they say no, it's like, then we have to get you a camera. Let me see if I have one you can use just to start you out, and let's teach you how to manually shoot. Because the key to being a photographer is that if you are an automatic shooter, you will not survive because climates change like this.
Mm-hmm.
Things change in 2 seconds. It could be sunny outside and then it will become shady really quickly. And automatic settings don't always adapt well. You have to be able to adapt and manipulate the light and the camera the way you want in order to be
Mm-hmm.
successful. And when I think about that, I always go, what can I do to give back? Because when everything we learn and everything that we experience is meant for us to give it back to somebody else. You know what I mean? So like even that doing that, you don't have a complex about yourself where you want to be the only successful person in the room. Because what is the point? Like, what really is the point of being successful if it's just me and everybody else is looking up to me like, oh my goodness, like, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, Dekimbe, like you doing like all this stuff and like we want to be just like you. Like, who wants that? Like, nobody wants that praise. It's about bringing the community with you. When you community build, everybody eats.
Mm-hmm. People think they want the praise though, and
Yeah,
that's the thing. I feel I recommend working out and like lifting weights to people a lot, and
yeah,
maybe it's just me. Like you said, I don't have that complex where I like that type of attention, right? Where all
yeah,
the eyes are on me.
yeah,
And there was a point in my bodybuilding career where you would walk into a party, you would walk into an event, most of the eyes are going to be on you because you just physically look different than a lot of people around you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that for me was like
yeah.
like,
Because of that,
yeah, that
yeah,
was one of the first points where I realized I'm like, I'm not this person. As much as I
yeah,
wanted, to have this look and thinking like, oh, these bodybuilders, they can do whatever they right, like they just shake and bake in the rooms, bro. When those eyes start turning on you, and it's like, okay, you're the only one who looks like that.
mhm,
You start looking at your other friends and being like, okay, well, let me just start hanging out actually with my other friends who actually just work out this level because like you said, you don't want to be there alone, right? And you start gravitating towards the people who are doing the same thing because you're like, oh, I don't have to be alone. There are other people who actually do this stuff, who are interested in this, who are taking
yeah,
care of themselves at that level. And then it becomes normal. And that's something that I strive for now in my business life, right? That's why I always say I'm always sending stuff to my family, to my friends, because I don't want to be at a point where, and I see it. I have friends who are very successful right now, and whether or not they'll admit it, I'm just like, bro, you're kind of insulated from a lot of the world around you, right? A lot of the other stuff because people can't do what you're able to do right now, right? If
yep,
you or you almost start limiting yourself because you haven't found that next group of people who can do everything that you're able to do now.
yeah,
And you say, okay, well, the group that I'm with now can only do this, so let me just stay here. And it goes back like we were saying at the gym. It's like, well, now you're not pushing yourself, you're not growing, you're not getting to that next level. So you have a decision to make. Do you stick there with the group that you've been comfortable with, or do you now separate and move forward because now you're getting the eyes? It's like, oh well, look, the man done just walked in, right, Mr. Moneybags. Oh, I see. You got it. I see you. You just pulled up in something
yeah,
nice. And it's like, bro, I don't want you don't want to have that conversation every time, right? And for people, that could be different. That could be a different salary level for people, just depending on where you're coming from, right?
yeah,
If you're here in Philadelphia, you can make $60,000 a year and become that person, right?
Yep.
Because like that's making good money here. If you're in West Philly making 60 grand, you're making a good living for yourself. So people might
Yeah.
start looking at you and you're like, well, I just work a normal job. But
Yeah.
now
You just
they're
feel.
and now this is where those that hesitation from, it's like, oh well, now I want to help people out. Why is my family, my friends coming to, because they don't look at you as somebody who's like trying to help. They look at you as, oh, now you're trying to tell me what to do because you done made it, right? Or like you got it all figured out. So like blah blah blah. And especially as
Mm-hmm.
men, we have to overcome that before we can even get to the point of being able to help one another. And I think
Yeah.
I said in the beginning of the episode, it's being able to get around that, right? Being able to kind of like just shut out all that noise of, people looking at you as something different and not letting that get to your head. Because I realize, like I said, I'm talking to somebody who doesn't let it get to my head with whatever type of success I found. And I'm still on the road of trying to hit financial success, but I think I've
Yeah.
achieved success in other areas. So I'm like, I want people to be able to do these things. I'm like, yo, if I learn something, I want to share that with people because I'm like, we can all do this. And
Yep.
I told you I was listening to this debate on the Diary of a CEO, and it was between Gary Stevenson and Daniel Priestley, actually, who we were talking about last week.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary Stevenson, he's a economist, and he's basically talking about how he doesn't believe that nowadays, there's much opportunity for people in the middle class and the lower class, right? He thinks it's like no matter how much you work, at the end of the day, you're probably 8 times out of 10, you're probably going to fail and not be able to succeed. Daniel Priestley's on the other side where it's like, yeah, it's extremely difficult out there, but to not try, to not come together, to not try to get to that point of, oh, okay, you hate all the wealthy people or you hate the rich people or you hate business owners. What does that do for you? Right?
Right.
Do you keep trying to pull these people down and tear them down because you see them separating? Or do you try to say, hey, somebody close to you has done exactly what you're demonizing the world for doing? So that person was able to double their salary. Why don't you ask them, what do they do? And it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take years and years and years. And that's also another hard part, right? Where you realize it's like, wait, Izzy's been doing this now for well over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not willing to put in a decade of work to get to get to a point of where I'm happy. But that's the kind of work it takes, and that's where I say, okay, like you I don't know. I think that's where also where the complex comes in. Like, okay, do you start hating the success that you want to achieve, or do you start getting real with yourself and saying this is going to take some work, and for me to get to that thing that I'm trying to tear down, I got to be able to, I got to pay the cost. So
Yeah.
just kind of thinking out loud
That's
here. It's just like, it's tough.
yeah.
You know?
It's a journey, and I think that if we just hone into and develop, it's okay for you to be in a space where you don't know who you are or
Mm-hmm.
what you want. Like, you know what I mean? I think that like we really need to, and I really really appreciate people who use their platforms to be transparent about the process. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody doesn't have to do that because I don't think that that's for everybody. Everybody's process is not to be seen outwardly, but for the people who know how to, they keep it real, or some people who don't, it's all they know how to do. I really appreciate those type of people because some people need to see you grind, you know what I mean, to
Yeah.
work towards your success and understand that like it's not a linear process. It really, really isn't. It literally is something that you have ups and downs. You go through the changes. You deal with personal things. You deal with family. Like there's so many things in life that have the potential to keep us from being successful. You know what I mean? But it's really leaning on your community and also just knowing yourself. Once again, I know I keep saying that, but like the self-development portion is what's going to skyrocket your success. And I say it from personal experience. Like when I started working on my situations, talking about my trauma more, being honest about it, going to therapy, making changes, I started to see my life start to elevate in more than just the financial ways.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a byproduct of it as well. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because the better you feel about yourself and the more you have the tools to be able to navigate life, which is difficult, the better off you'll be because all those personal self-development tools that you learn help you to be successful in your career and in
Yep.
your path and in your business. It literally helps you because now you have a better grasp on patience, you have a better grasp on process, you give yourself more grace, you give the process more grace, like, you know what I mean, and you pivot a little better. But that comes with practice and learning and also just being in a space where you can admit I need some help in this area. Or I can come to you and say, yo, Dekimbe, like, bro, like, I have the talent, like, you know what I mean? But I don't have the strategy. You do. You've been podcasting for this amount of time. I want to start a podcast.
Mhm.
What advice would you give me starting out? Like, you know what I mean? Like, really coming to somebody and just being honest and vulnerable about the process. Like, listen, I'm frustrated because I feel like I have what it takes, but the strategy just isn't what it needs to be. In order for you to do that, you have to be aware of the process and not just be sitting around panicking and say, okay, this wasn't successful. Let me jump to the next
Mhm.
one. Okay, my Instagram's not popping. Let me jump on TikTok and do that too.
Yep.
Let me do 50 million things until one thing pops. I understand that strategy and I don't think that it's a terrible strategy, but I also think that you can burn out easily
Mhm.
trying to manage multiple things at one time instead of, okay, I've been on Instagram for a while and this is where my following is. Let me still make my TikTok. Let me get on there and test the waters, whatever, network over there, but let me still figure out what I need to do here to be successful here because I spent a lot of time
Yeah.
here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You were when you were saying that, just going over strategies and finding out something that would work. It reminded me of a conversation that I had probably 2 years ago now. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Actually, no, probably a little bit over a year ago with one of my lending partners, Josh. Shout out to Josh. He's another First Sip alumni. And I was basically telling him about my thoughts of wanting to switch and focus a lot on rental clients because
Mm-hmm.
in real estate, it's hard to find listings and find buyers because people aren't buying homes you don't know people who are just buying homes every single day, right? Your network is
Mm-hmm.
small. You don't have that large of a sphere of influence. So it takes time to build up to that point where people even want to trust you, right, with going through the sale. But rentals, depending on where you're living, right, where we're at right now, you can rent an
Mm-hmm.
apartment every other day, right? Like I said, I got a tour right after this. So at that point, I told Josh, I said, hey, I'm thinking about switching over, and focusing primarily on doing rentals because if I do this, if I get, let's say if I, my target at the time was I want to rent 100 rentals. And then if I do that over the next couple of years, let's say 10% of those people convert into home buyers, that's 10 buyers a year, right? And if I'm looking at that, based on where we're at, that's an extra $60,000 per year. So you talk about that whole strategy and stuff like that. The reason I'm
Mm-hmm.
bringing this up is because when I went to other people with this idea who, quote unquote, more successful or whatever it is, they shot it down. They said, nah, man, you need to be doing this. You need to be doing that. You need to be in all these different places. And I'm sitting here with Josh. He's like, bro, just keep it simple, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't got to do all these different things. And just like you were talking about social media, I think like sometimes we do get overwhelmed with trying to manage so many things instead of saying like,
Mm-hmm.
yo, find the thing that works for you. Once that's working, right? Keep it going, and then take about 10% of your energy and put it into this other bucket, and see
Yeah.
how that's going. Right? For me,
Yeah.
like I was like, okay, I'm gonna go all in on rentals. I'm gonna try to do everything I got to do to become the best rental agent. Know that people, I can have the conversation with them if they want to move and buy their first home, which I've helped people do over the last 3 years. But at the same point, it's just like let me focus on something that is repeatable, something that I can build around, and really gain a solid knowledge base. Because then when you do, like you were talking about the skill, like picking up skills along the way, that for me is like, okay,
Yeah.
now I can take this. And it's like now when you start having those conversations with the home sellers, think about how many homes you're going to be in if you're renting 100 of them a year,
Right.
right? Like sometimes we
Right.
we over or we don't give enough. I guess we don't give enough credit to the simple, right? We don't give enough credit to the simple strategies. Yo, just post on Instagram 3 times a week. Pick up your phone and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is what I did today for work. Right? You're a photographer. I have another friend, Ruben, who's a photographer. He's been on the podcast. Every other day, he's posting and saying like, just did this shoot with such and such person. Right? Spring's coming up. This was a great thing. They had this idea, and not like asking right away for to work with him, but it's like, yo, he's working, and
Yeah.
just that constant reminder, just like how I see you, it's like it's cool to see people who are doing stuff, working on their craft, showing like you said, showing that progress over time. Because now you want to grow with them too. It's like, yo, if you're that
Yeah.
type of person, right? Some people just
Yeah.
definitely won't care, but
Yeah.
there's good. Like you said, when you find your first 10 people who are really always there liking your stuff and sticking with you consistently, it's so great. And then you start getting the return, the referrals, right? And just like how I went from like my rental business, you start getting the referrals. People are recognizing your system and saying, hey, you help me out with this. I got somebody else who I need that service with. Hey, you help me buy this
Yeah.
home. I got somebody else who can do this. But you
Yeah.
you really won't, and take it from somebody who's pivoted all over the place before you should have. You got to stick to this thing until the point where it gets so boring that you're like, yo, I know this so easy that I don't even have to like leave my bed to do this. Like that's
Yep.
the point you want to get to before you start making the switch.
Yep.
Because if it's not that boring and mundane, then you probably haven't figured it out like the back of your hand. and it's just like that man, it was such a hard thing for me to do, and I just want to make sure like we're not skipping over these things that seem so simple, right? Because like I said, people, they'll take it for granted. They'll be like, oh, well, you said it was okay, cool, let me do it. Do it for 6 months and
Yeah,
then come back and talk to us,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Do it
yeah.
for 6 months.
I
Do it for
hope
three
y'all.
years.
I hope y'all listening. We're
It's
giving
tough,
out
man.
free game right
It's tough, but I don't want to hold us here because I know we both got stuff to do. But I do want to sum it up with the end it with the content rec, but also saying like I'm definitely going to be sending out the invite. So guys, keep an eye out for that with that social media accelerator. Izzy, I'm going to reach out to you after this so we can talk more about that and figure out a way to like start
now.
getting some people in the room. But
For sure.
yeah, that is something I definitely want us to do within the next 2 months, right? Like within the next month, let's figure out a way to get in the room, get some ideas going together. It's
Definitely.
yeah, so definitely some good stuff going on that. But let's just go ahead and get what's the content rec you got for this week before we sum up the episode?
Say it again.
What's the content rec that you got for us this week before we end the episode?
Uh, this one always stumps me because I feel like
Mhm.
sometimes I be in my own world and
Mhm.
don't be practicing content.
Okay.
Content rec. Um. So I want to recommend this right here. This is a mug from my homie Mike Richards.
Yep.
Um, he has an awesome brand, but he also has a podcast called Keeping It a Bean.
Yep.
I've been on a few episodes this month. He is highlighting women for Women's History Month, but he is just a great guy, young guy in the city, moving and shaking. Talks about a lot of social issues. I've been on a episode of his before, but he just holds great conversations. Always honest. He talks about challenging masculinity. I don't
Mhm.
know why I'm struggling saying that, talking too fast. But the conversations that he holds are just great, and I think that he's a great guy, and more people need to hear his voice. Um, so, Keeping It a Bean podcast on Instagram, it is keeping it a bean,
Mhm.
literally. Um, and I can share it and give you the information to it or whatever. But he does great work, and more people need to hear it. He also has a coffee brand called Leroy's Blend, which he sold these mugs to go with it
Mhm.
as well. So it's a Guatemalan roast, I believe. So he's just doing his thing.
Yeah.
Young black man in the city, really moving and shaking and doing some work and having good, meaningful conversation. From social to social constructs to issues in the city, things going on, governmental issues. Like he just hosts great conversation, and I love a person who just has a meaningful platform.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they let their life kind of speak for itself. So shout out to him.
Yeah, it's definitely needed, and I'll make sure we go ahead and tag his stuff in the description too, so you guys can check that out. And I'll end it with my content rec too, which is I was talking about it briefly during the episode, which is the recent episode of the Diary of a CEO. If depending on when you're watching this, it's the episode where he does the I think it's still titled "Emergency Debate" between
Okay.
Daniel Priestley and Gary Stevenson, where they're talking about the state of the economy, right? The way things are going across the world right now, depending on where you're living. We're here in the U.S. and the economy has definitely been shaken up. And they're having a
Yeah.
conversation about whether or not people in the middle class, people in the lower class can still actually get ahead if they try. And I thought it was a very interesting debate, but not only the debate, reading the comments, because
Yeah.
comments are always so interesting to me. And I know, and it depends on the platform, because I realize like you're going to get comments from a range of different people and you don't know who they actually are. You don't know if they're bots. But there was an overwhelming support on Gary's side about how he doesn't believe most people can still get ahead unless something changes systemically, right? Like unless these governments go ahead and change all around, he doesn't think most people can get ahead. And Daniel Priestley was on the other side, basically saying he's like, hey, well, listen, how can you tell that to a 19-year-old? You can't tell a 19-year-old, hey, look, go ahead and try, give it your all, work hard, learn all these tools, but at the end of the day, you still won't be able to make it ahead. And Gary's
Yeah.
like, well, you can try, but let's look at it. A lot of these wealthy people control most of the assets, they control most of the money, and it's not trickling down. And it was such an interesting debate. But for me, I worry about what does that look like for the younger people, for the people our age, right? Because I know plenty of people our age who have pretty much given up in life, who say,
Yeah.
I don't think I can get ahead, bro. All this stuff that y'all talking is a whole bunch of nonsense, right? Let me go
Yeah.
ahead and just keep, getting my paycheck and just keep my Netflix subscription going, and I'm chilling. And I worry about that because, like I said, that's something we also have to combat against. When we're talking about all this stuff about starting businesses, being able to lean into our skills and development, if you don't have a community of people around you who actually believe you can get ahead and actually make something out of nothing, like you were saying, what's the point?
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying it's such an interesting conversation. And if anybody checks it out, please reach out to me, right? DM me, text me, whatever it is, because I want to know like your thoughts on it. Like, do you think this is something that we really can't get out of? Because I'm sitting here doing episodes every week talking about like, oh no, we got to do this. Let's make sure we take this tips, take this advice, right? Make sure we saving our money. This is the opportunity here. Bringing on stock advisors, certified planners, right? People who are just giving out information for free. And then you see this overwhelming conversation about just like none of us can make it. And I'm just like, yo, I have a lot of friends who own nice homes, good families. You know what I mean? Like my parents, like they pretty much chilling right now. Made some simple decisions in life. So I'm just like, what are we reaching for? What are we striving for? Are we even clear on that when we're talking about not being able to get ahead? Like,
That's a whole different conversation, bro.
bro,
I don't think you
yeah.
understand. I don't even want to start because if I say something about that, we're gonna be here for like 2 more hours.
I want to
Do
hear
you have a
if you could give me a quick 2 minutes. If you can give me a quick 2 minutes on it, because that's what, like I'm scratching my head. I'm just like you're saying, what's the point? And this will be the final bit here. So,
okay?
mhm,
I think the main culprit and the main issue is the spreading of misinformation and people not going back and doing their research on things. I think there's a lot of fear mongering like going on right now. So the media is just posting like for instance everything that the orange man says.
yeah,
People people tend to they put out, oh, this happened. And while some things are happening, some people are losing hope because it just seems like one thing after another thing after another thing. And some things are misinformation. And
mhm,
it's our job, people, to make sure the things that we are consuming are accurate, real, and true and actually can happen. So a lot of people lose hope because they follow like, I'm not going to name any
mhm.
names because I know it's on your podcast. I
Everybody
don't want to
probably
like.
just thought of one already. So it's like just whoever you thought of that you believe isn't
I
believable.
have I unfollowed
Hmm.
all of those
Hmm.
platforms because I was tired of one being overloaded and overstimulated with information. Some of it which is not even relevant to life, some of it which is entertainment information that I don't really care about
Hmm.
necessarily, and some of it that is just misinformation because a lot of them operate by clicks
Yeah.
and engagement. You know what I mean? So even if it's wrong, if people can be in the comments going, this is wrong,
Hmm.
such and such and such. They're getting what they want out of
Hmm.
it. Their motive, their intention isn't necessarily in the content, the quality of content. It's in getting engagement and
Yeah.
follows. So sometimes you have to just reframe your mind and protect yourself from some of the things that you're seeing and hearing. And you have to realize that you do have agency.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to just be a victim to these things, especially if they're evoking certain emotions from you that you don't want to experience or you feel like you can't control or triggering you. I'll say that.
Yeah.
That's why some of us don't feel like we have any hope because we're not putting our minds in the space of places that are filled with hope.
Misdirected energy. A whole bunch of misdirected energy. That's what it is. And
Yeah,
yeah, we
I'll
will.
keep it short with that though because we could talk about this
I
all
was gonna
day,
say, yeah, we gotta have
literally.
it. That's gonna be our next episode. We're gonna follow up on that because, like you said, we gotta cut through this information, get in the rooms with people who actually know what's going on, create the rooms
Yeah.
that we can get the information in. Because, like you were talking about, I think and shout out. I follow the entrepreneur on social on Instagram. I don't know if people check him out. I don't know him personally, but he's somebody who I follow on Instagram, connected on social media, and he was having this conversation the other day about sometimes, especially in our community, right, in our Black community, we don't have a lot of older people who are coming out and being the leaders and creating these rooms and sharing the
Mm-hmm.
information. Right. For people who talk about like gatekeepers, there's a lot of gatekeepers, right? Like in your own community, in your own like circles. And this is where I think we have the responsibility week over week to cut through the misinformation, right? To cut
Yes.
through the mental thoughts that we're all walking through, whether that be somebody who doesn't understand how much it is to rebrand their business, right? Or somebody who doesn't
Yeah.
understand what's going on in the economy, what they need to do to prepare themselves to move into home ownership. I'm a big believer that we have to find a way to take on that responsibility and to create these solutions that we keep looking for. Bro, I'm not going to spend the next 20 years of my life being like some of my family members complaining about everything that's going on in politics and being like, bro, y'all
Yeah.
haven't created one event or ever talked to me one time about how to save money or invest in anything.
Yeah.
But you can tell me
Yep.
everything that has gone on in politics for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's the part I'm just like, at a certain point, we have to stop the
Yeah.
nonsense. We have to get serious about it. People who are capable take on that responsibility and be like, yo, let me find my 10 people, let me find my soldiers, and
Yeah.
like, let's go to war. Because like that,
And I do.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah.
And I know we're
Mhm. No, you're
on
good.
here for time. I do want our older generation to not be so hopeless and arrogant in their approach to certain things. I don't care who really gets offended by it because I think it's the truth.
Hmm.
A lot of the older generation is these young people aren't like
Hmm.
us when we were younger. Blah blah blah. This terrible. We have people doing this, but you're sitting in your house watching news.
Hmm.
Like you don't get into your community, you don't engage, you don't give your perspective about what you've been through, about the many things and the wisdom that you do have from what you've witnessed, because you have wisdom because you've lived life. So instead of criticizing people, why won't you get outside and do something? Gather with people. I'm not saying you got to be on the front lines of the community, like trying to get things to happen if that's not who you are, but it is your responsibility to get into the town hall meetings and to talk to the legislators and like help things move forward in your community instead of sitting around and complaining about how it's a lost generation.
Hmm.
Like those kind of things bother me because you might as well not say anything because you complaining about it is not affecting change in any way, shape, or form. It's actually making it worse.
Yep, man, I couldn't end it
Yeah.
in a better way. And that's the topic we gotta save that for the next episode because we will definitely go
Yeah.
in on that one. But
We
people,
need to call
yeah,
the next episode "Protect Your Energy"
I
and
like
then
that.
just talk.
Yep, I like that because
We
that's
have so
that's the
many good.
that's the only way to keep the focus. That is the only way to keep the
Yeah.
focus. So, people,
Yeah.
until that next one, I appreciate you guys listening too. But until next time, stay tuned, stay curious,
Yes.
and as always, enjoy your first sip.
Peace.